Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to take a look at painting light elf skin, and so to serve as our example here we're going to use this little elf from RelicBlade, and this is from the Wilderkin faction in that game. We're going to use some Vallejo model colored dark flesh. Get us started, we're going to add a little bit of cork brown to this, both from the same paint line. And we're just simply going to slap these down onto the palette, and they're going to be roughly 1-to-1. And I'm just going to use the dampness of the brush just to thin the color out ever so slightly, as this is going to be the base coat for this color. Now, as I want the flesh to be fairly light, we are basically going to apply this in a roughly, thin out manner. We are going to have to apply this in 2 coats, I do believe we apply to this, and it's applied on top of a gray primer. The hair was already done for a previous video on painting hair color, obviously, and if you go back into the Fresh Tips series, you'll find that video, or you can click the one up in the corner there. With this, of course, you also may notice that there's some speckling on the model, and that's because she was standing a little too close to a corpse grinder. So yeah, that's what that speckling is. No biggie. I just, work around it. And of course, because we have the paint in a thinned out fashion, you can see some of that gray under prime showing through, and that's not a huge deal because, again, once we apply that second layer, it's nice and opaque. Cork brown is next, and I'm going to add 2 drops of Liquitex Flow Aid to this. I'm going to use a heavy helping of water to thin the color out. And yes, you guessed it, we are going to make a shade wash out of this color. Now, I'm looking for a subtle transition of color. I'm not looking for a big jump here. And again, because I want this skin to be pretty light in tone, so that's why we are just going with a very minimal amount of shading here. Again, we already made the base tone a 50-50 mix of this cork brown and flesh tone, and so with this color here, it's really just as simple as just applying it, letting it fall within the recesses, and giving us our low tones. And that's really about as dark as we're going to go with this. We're going to jump back into some dark flesh, which was part of the base tone, and we're going to add some beige. This is from Vallejo model color. I'm also going to use some glaze medium just to thin this color out. So this is going to roughly be a 1-to-1 mix ratio. And with dropper style bottles, you can pretty much just, add a drop here and there. And I add 2 drops of medium. I'm also going to grab a fairly generous amount of water to help thin the color out ever so slightly. And we are going to glaze these highlights in. And now with this initial highlight here, I basically pretty much just follow the lay of the land, as it were, basically just following each of the volumes of muscle as I work my way through, covering up quite a bit. But as with the previous layer, because we have it thinned out with the glaze medium, it actually has a bit of translucency to it, and so once it dries, we will apply another layer, and it allows me to build up a slight gradient on this. Now, the whole reason for using the glaze medium, it's really just a personal preference. I like the viscosity of glaze medium as opposed to regular other kinds of thinners that are a little bit waterier. Versus the glaze medium, which actually has a bit more of the viscosity of the paint itself. Now, anybody who's not used Vallejo paints in the past, they are fairly thin body paint, but they flow very nicely. And with the medium involved, it doesn't change the feeling of the paint, and it just basically increases the translucency of the paint, makes it a little less opaque, so that fewer or actually more layers would be required. But you can build up to a very nice transition using this stuff for anybody who's not really used to doing a lot of glazing. Using mediums that are designed to assist in these kinds of effects and techniques and things of that nature make life a little bit easier. So you can see I'm just basically just picking out all the forms, building up. I'm not really highlighting to any kind of particular type of idea, standard, or anything like that. It's really more or less just a layered highlight that we're applying onto these surfaces. I'm just following the jawline, most of the colors on the face, on the cheekbone, basically concentrating more of the highlights towards the center of the face. On the shoulders, I build it out towards the ends, and of course on the biceps, I'm building up to the high points as well. Next, we're going to take some beige all on its lonesome. We're going to slap a little bit onto the palette. I'm going to add a drop or two of glaze medium to this. And once we have it mixed, I basically add just a little bit of water, just the dampness really. And with that, we begin applying. And then with the face, I simply do it in the typical fashion, which I do, which is on the brow, the forehead, the tip of the nose, the cheekbone, and a little bit at the tip of the chin as well. On the muscle groups, I simply just highlight the uppermost portions, or in a stylized approach, I build downwards on the shoulder muscle. And whereas on the forearm, I build up just quite a bit of highlight there, building up towards the elbow, and then down on the lower portion of that forearm, just a little bit there on that part of the forearm. Build it up closer to the wrist, as well as the bicep. I build it up towards the shoulder, but on the shoulder, I build it out towards the bicep. Change of direction, it's just an aesthetics choice. It's not like I'm following any kind of zenithal or, anything kind of like that. I'm just, applying it. And again, with these kind of models, it's a bit more of a dramatic approach to it, I suppose, but it's not like, you're breaking the rules or, a great deal here. You can see on the forearm there, I only did that one muscle group as opposed to the other one. Again, when you have deliberate choices like that applied to a surface, that's what's going to help the eye, the viewer, to visualize the gradients and perceive them as such. We're going to take Ivory next. That's Vallejo's model color. Add a drop. It's actually a fairly generous drop to it. And I'm going to take a generous amount of water, thin that down into another glaze, as it were, and begin very precisely laying these in. Now, a lot of this stuff that I'm demonstrating here, I show initially the first couple strokes of laying it down on where I go as far as onto the model. But then a fair amount of it is also done off camera because it's just a little easier for my eyes to perceive what I'm working on as opposed to, trying to angle this properly. And of course, with that final highlight, you can see we simply just built those up to those directions, filling out the volumes on the muscles and really just helping create that gradient there. But that is it. That is a light elf skin using Vallejo colors. Hopefully you found this one informative and interesting. And this is basically going to be a two-parter, as we're going to work on the flesh and then we're going to work on the clothing in the next part. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and you'll be taken off to a magical website called Patreon, where there are varying tiers of support, and so click on whatever makes sense to you. And a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.